this is the exact upper body change that made people start asking me what I was doing in the gym. My shoulders looked more shaped, my back looked tighter, and my arms had that subtle definition without me doing anything extreme or bulking at all. And the crazy part, I didn't add a bunch of new workouts. I just locked in a few key exercises and started doing them right away. So in this video, I'm showing you the exact upper body exercises I swear by right now and how I do them to get that toned, sculpted look without overcomplicating anything. First exercise, rope face pulls. The first exercise that completely changed how my upper body looks is rope face pulls. And I feel like this one is so underrated. I always get asked how I got my back to show that toned and definition look on my upper back, because anytime I wear a backless top, it shows when I move. Especially for girls who want that toned look without getting bulky, this movement targets your rear delt and upper back, which are muscles that don't get enough attention but make a huge difference in how your upper body actually looks, especially from the side and back. And I used to skip this all the time because it didn't feel as intense as other exercises, but that was only because I wasn't doing it properly. So once I learned how to actually perform it with control, it became a staple in my workout. The biggest thing with face pulls is your form, because if you're just pulling the rope towards your chest and using momentum, you're not gonna feel much. But when you set the cable at about face height, grab the rope and pull it towards your face while keeping your elbows high and slightly flared out, that's when you start to feel it in the right places. I always think about pulling the rope apart at the end of the movement and squeezing my upper back for a second before slowly releasing it, because that pause makes a huge difference. And another thing is not going too heavy, because this is one of those exercises where lighter weight with good control is way more effective than going heavy and losing form. And once I started focusing on that mind to muscle connection and really feeling my rear delts working, I noticed my posture improving. My shoulders looked more defined and my upper body just looking more put together overall, which is exactly what you want when your goal is to look toned and not bulky. And I usually keep this in my routine for higher reps, focusing on control and consistency rather than just trying to push through it, because this is one of those small but powerful movements that really adds detail to your upper body over time. Second point, lat pull downs. The second exercise is lat pull downs, and this one is honestly one of the best ones if you're trying to get that toned upper body look. It targets your lats, which are the muscles along your back that help create that slight shape and definition that makes your waist look smaller and your upper body look way more put together overall. And I know a lot of girls avoid training their back because they're scared of looking too big, but that's not something that just happens from doing a few back exercises, especially when you're training with control, consistency, and not going extremes with heavy ego lifting or super high volume all the time. And for me, lat pull downs made a huge difference once I actually learned how to do them properly. Before, I was just pulling the bar down however I could, using my arms way too much, leaning back too far, and not really feeling my back working at all. So it felt like I was doing something, but it wasn't actually giving me the results I wanted. And that's when I realized I needed to slow everything down and actually focus on what muscle I was trying to target instead of just moving the weight. And now I focus on keeping my chest slightly lifted, my core stable, and initializing the movement by pulling my shoulders down first before I even bend my arms, because that little step alone completely changes how the exercise feels. And then I bring the bar down toward my upper chest in a controlled way, not rushing it or letting momentum take over. And I think about driving my elbows down toward my sides instead of just pulling with my hands, because that mental cue helps me actually engage my back instead of letting my arms do all the work. Another thing that made a big difference for me was slowing down the movement, especially on the way back up, because that part is just as important as pulling down. And when you control it instead of letting the weight pull you up quickly, you keep tension on your lats for longer, which makes the exercise way more effective overall. And I also make sure I'm not swinging my body or leaning back too much, because that usually means I'm using momentum instead of muscle. And once I started focusing on all of this consistently, I noticed my strength improving, my posture getting better, and that subtle definition starting to show on my back, especially around my waistline area, which is exactly what creates that toned look without making you look bulky. And what I also love about this exercise is that you can actually progress in it over time without changing much. Because you can slowly increase the weight while still maintaining good form, that steady progression is what really leads to results. Not rushing to lift heavy too soon or sacrificing form just to move more weight. Once I stopped focusing on how heavy I could go and started focusing on how well I could actually feel the movement, that's when everything started to click and my upper body started looking more defined in a way that still felt feminine, balanced and natural instead of forced or overdone. Third point, single arm cable rows or dumbbell rows. This is one of my favorites because it really helps you focus on each side individually, which makes a huge difference when it comes to actually feeling the muscle work and building a balanced upper body. And I didn't realize how important that was until I noticed that one side of my back felt stronger than the other. And doing both arms at the same time was kind of hiding that imbalance. So I thought everything was even when it actually wasn't. And that's something a lot of people don't notice until they start isolating each side properly. So once I started doing single arm movements, I was able to really slow things down and focus on each side of my back separately. It helped me make sure I was engaging the right muscles properly instead of letting my stronger side take over, and that alone made my workouts feel way more effective. And the key with this exercise is not just pulling the weight back and calling it a day, but actually controlling it the entire movement from start to finish. Because the real benefit comes from how well you perform the rep, not just completing it. So whether you're using a cable machine or a dumbbell, you want to keep your chest slightly up, your core tight, and stay stable so your body isn't swinging or shifting around. And then you pull your elbow back close to your body while really focusing on squeezing your back at the top of the movement instead of just using your arm to move the weight. One cue that helped me a lot was thinking about bringing my elbows toward my hip rather than just pulling the weight straight back, because that mental switch instantly helped me feel my lats working more instead of just my biceps or shoulders taking over. And just like with everything else in upper body training, slowing it down makes a huge difference, especially on the way back down, because that part of the movement is where you keep tension on the muscle and actually build control and strength. And I also make sure I'm not twisting my body or leaning into the weight to cheat the movement. I do twist a little bit, just slightly, so I could really take that and feel it right in my lats. Once I started focusing on all of these small details consistently, I could actually feel the exercise working in a completely different way. And over time, this movement really helped add that subtle definition to my back that contributes to that toned look without making anything look too big or bulky. And I think what I love most about this exercise is how simple it is, because it doesn't require anything complicated. But when you do it with intention and control, it becomes one of the most effective movements for building a balanced, sculpted upper body. And I've kept it in my routine ever since because it's easy to progress, easy to feel, and it actually delivers results when done properly. Fourth point, rear delt flies. Rear delt flies actually play such a huge role in shaping your upper body, especially your shoulders, because your rear delts are what help give your shoulders that rounded, defined look from all angles, not just from the front. And when I wasn't training this part properly, my shoulders looked kind of flat and unbalanced, even though I was doing other upper body exercises consistently. So I didn't really understand why my physique wasn't changing the way I wanted it to. But once I started including rear delt flies consistently and actually doing them with intention, I noticed a big difference in how my shoulders looked, especially in photos and even just in the mirror from the side. And the key with this exercise is using a weight that you can actually control properly, because if you go too heavy, you'll almost always end up using momentum or your traps instead of your rear delt. And then you don't really feel it where you're supposed to. So it becomes one of those exercises that looks like you're doing it, but isn't actually giving you results. So what I focus on now is hinging slightly forward at the hips, keeping my chest angled down just a bit, and maintaining a small bend in my arms the entire time. And then I lift the weights out to the side in a controlled way while thinking about squeezing the back of my shoulders, almost like I'm trying to open my upper back. And I keep the movement slow and controlled from start to finish, especially on the way down, because that lowering phase is where you actually build a lot of control and muscle engagement. And I also make sure I'm not shrugging my shoulders up during the movement, because that immediately shifts the tension away from the rear delt and into my traps, which defeats the whole purpose of the exercise. And this is definitely one of those movements where lighter weight and higher reps work way better than trying to go heavy. It's not about how much you can lift, it's about how well you can feel and control the muscle throughout the entire set. Once I stopped worrying about the number on the dumbbells or on the machine and started focusing on how clean and controlled my reps were, I started feeling the burn in the exact right place every time. Over time, this exercise really helped add that detail and definition to my upper body without making anything look bulky or overdeveloped, which is exactly what I was going for. And once I started taking it seriously and doing it properly every week, I noticed my shoulders looking way more rounded, my upper body looking more balanced, and everything just started to come together in a way that felt natural and toned instead of forced or uneven. Fifth point, pull-ups. The last exercise is pull-ups or assisted pull-ups if you're still working your way up to doing them unassisted. And this is probably one of the most effective upper body exercises you can include in your routine. Because it targets your back, shoulders, and arms all at the same time, which makes it amazing for building overall strength and that toned look without focusing too much on isolating one muscle. And I know this exercise can feel intimidating at first, okay? Because I couldn't do a single pull-up when I started either. And I used to avoid it completely because I thought it was just too hard and not something I could ever actually do. So I would stick to machines and easier movements instead. But once I started using the assisted pull-up machine or resistant bands, I like resistant bands way better, I realized that you can build up to it over time, and that's what makes it so effective, because you're gradually getting stronger while still practicing the full movement pattern, and your body is learning how to control your own weight step by step instead of skipping straight to the hardest version. And the key here is focusing on proper form instead of just trying to get as many reps as possible or rushing through them. So I was thinking about engaging my back first before anything else, pulling my shoulders down away from my ears, and then driving my elbows down toward the floor as I lift my body up in a controlled way, rather than just using my arms or swinging my legs to get myself up. Because that usually takes all the attention away from the muscles you're actually trying to train. And I also make sure I control the way down instead of just dropping back into the starting position, because that lowering phase is where you build a lot of strength and control that actually helps you progress faster over time. Even if you can only do a few reps at the beginning or you need a lot of assistance, that is completely fine and honestly expected, because consistency is what matters most here, not perfection. And over time, you'll notice yourself getting stronger, needing less assistance, and eventually being able to do full body weight reps. And what I love about this exercise is how efficient it is, because it works so many muscles at once without making anything look over bulky or overtrained. It just creates that strong, defined, athletic upper body look that still feels natural. And once I started including this regularly into my routine, even when I was still using assistance, I still am using assistance, I noticed a huge difference in my overall strength, my back definition, and even how confident I felt during other exercises, which is why it became one of my go-to movements and something I always come back to no matter how my training changes over time. If you found this video valuable, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for more fitness and health related content, specifically for us girls who want to achieve our dream body, mind, soul, and spirit. Stay consistent, stay confident, and I'll see you in the next one.